Okay, we're recording, and I'm here today with a magical guest that I'm so happy to have on the channel. It's the beautiful, amazing Julia, who I came in contact through her yoga studio that she has in Stockholm. That is so amazing. It's like one of the nicest yoga studios, I would say, in the world. It has such a cool offering. It's so modern. There's so many different classes and teachers, and I think I came there quite early on. I remember walking past it as it was kind of opening, and it was kind of a crystal store or something, and I was like, what's this? And then I went inside, and the lady who was working in the crystal store was like, yeah, and down there we're gonna have like yoga classes and this and that. And I was like, all right. And then I started going to your and Rebecca's classes on like Wednesday evenings mostly, for quite a long time. I don't know if you remember your
Yeah, I
LS
do.
classes. And those were it was such a like special time for me, and it was such a nice, like every Wednesday or every other Wednesday I would go there and feel so held and like nourished. And when you're shifting maybe paths, it was such a nice transition phase to have this beautiful space, and you're such an amazing space holder and make everyone feel so warm and welcome and all of this. So I'm so happy to have you here and talk a bit to you about yoga and all the things around this. So yeah, welcome, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me and for that amazing introduction. I'm like blushing over here. No, but seriously, it's so beautiful to hear what your experience with the studio is and what those Wednesday evenings meant to you. Because yeah, I remember them well. I think I remember the first class you came to with me. I'm not sure if that was your first class ever, was
Yeah,
it?
no, I think it was, yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, with life force activation. And it was, at the time it was called, we called it CAP because I was still part of the CAP brand. But yeah, I remember it well, and your sensitivity and receptivity to the energy, and your also the look in your eyes afterwards. You were like,
I was like, what just happened?
yeah.
Oh, so beautiful.
Oh.
So, just to get started a bit, and I think this is kind of a theme that I'm doing throughout these talks, is I'm always curious to hear how people came in contact with yoga and this kind of whole space in the first place.
Yeah, so my journey with yoga started a long time ago. I think I was 14 or 15 the first time I
Wow.
came in contact with yoga. So it's like I'm gonna reveal my age now, but it's like 2 years ago. Um, and I was staying with my parents, of course, because I was a teenager and I was living in a small town in the south part of Sweden, and the gym started introducing a class called yoga, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting."
Yeah.
I've been to a few Pilates classes there, and then I went to the yoga class, and I sort of liked the workout because that's what it was to me then, and also the way that the teacher was treating it, more
Yeah.
like stretching yet strength building type of practice. And then I kept going like regularly, but not, it was not like I was a committed or like a
Like, yeah.
yogi in that sense. Yeah, it was more, yeah, I liked going there, and it was a nice like addition to my life. And
You were
then,
quite young to find it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I used to compete in gymnastics when I was a kid. So for me, I had been looking for like something to still work on flexibility that didn't correlate to that.
Yeah.
And when I found yoga, that felt like, oh, but this could be something for me. Like it
Yeah.
felt more of what I was longing for.
Yeah.
Um, but then it was when I moved to Stockholm when I was in my early 20s,
Hmm.
when I started practicing with a bigger variety of teachers, because in my hometown there was only
Yeah.
one. Uh, so I started like going to different classes and also learning a bit more about what yoga was and the philosophy, and I got interested in the concept of yoga.
Yeah.
And then after that, I came to a class with who's still today my favorite teacher. I went to his class, and I remember I came in late. And as I came in, he had already started the class. Like he was guiding the people in the room, and it was quite many people there. And he was like, "You can step on my mat," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh.
So I was like in the front of the class. And then he brought out another mat where he could sit, but it was still like I was at the front. And it was in Balasana. I know I've spoken about this in other interviews before, but it was such a, like, it was that aha moment.
Yeah.
When he was telling an anecdote or a story. I don't remember what it was about, but it was like my whole being it just clicked for me. Like I could finally understand what yoga actually is, and that there's so much more than asana. There's so much more than a physical practice. It was body, mind, and soul coming together. And
Yeah.
after that, yoga became something completely different. It became much more, and also a way of living. And because yoga means union, right?
Yeah.
Union of body, mind, and soul. So we can practice yoga in every minute, every day, all the time.
Yeah.
Asana is a way of practicing yoga, but we can yoga all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like the starting point of my yoga journey. So it had like a few different pathways, I would say, but it's been such an anchor for me. Like
Yeah.
whenever I feel off, or if I go through something, yoga guides me back home
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah.
And also, if we're talking about yoga as the physical practice of yoga, stepping on the mat,
Yeah.
I can be everything that I am on the mat. I can be frustrated. I can be tired. I can be energetic. I can be angry. I can be fiery. I can be passionate. I can be sensual. Like everything can take up space in the yoga practice.
Yeah. I resonate so much with your whole story. I was also a gymnast when I was younger, so I remember also that first moment when I came onto a yoga mat and I was like, wow, this is my thing.
Yeah.
Immediately I was like, oh, this is how my body wants to move. Everything made a lot of sense. And I think that's also the big teaching from yoga, as you say, with like the union, to realize that not only are we connected on the inside, we're connected to the entire world, we're connected to each other, and it's this kind of merging of consciousness, and kind of it's a doorway, I guess, into yourself, but also how you relate to the rest of the world, kind of, which
For
is why it's
sure.
so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a very powerful practice when you allow it to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like there is this meme that keeps on popping up in my Instagram feed like a few times every year, of chickens like being like running really fast, and it says like you believe that yogis are zen, but this is what yogis looks like on their way to yoga class. It's like always a bit late. But
Yeah.
it's that commitment, the commitment to yourself, that
Yeah.
is the one thing that matters. It's
Yeah.
not even about the practice. It's about what that actually gives you when you commit and when you devote yourself to being.
Yeah, it's that connection that you're cultivating with your like inner world, and you're like devoting yourself a bit to yourself in one way. And it's like, as you say, regardless of how you're feeling, everything is allowed in that space, and that's why it's such a beautiful thing to devote yourself to, because it's like this allowing and like taking in everything that you are and everything that's present, and it's a very like accepting way of like managing your life, I guess, to the ups and the
Exactly.
downs, and to come back to your center and to find your breath again. And I really resonate when you say that it's like an anchor. When as soon as you're starting to like feel a bit off on like something's not working, it's like immediately can help you come back to yourself and your roots and your groundedness again.
Yeah,
But
it really
fire
does.
going up.
And I loved how you said that it's about devoting yourself to yourself,
Yeah.
because that's like, we're probably going to speak more about that as well, but I work a lot with non-duality as a foundation in everything that I do, and that's exactly what it is. It's about devotion to self
Wow.
being consciousness, being God, being whatever you want to call it. But that's, yoga is inviting us to do that. And
Yeah.
maybe that's not your path. I mean, it's not for everyone, but there is so many different pathways to devote to self.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that like I want you to talk a bit more about non-duality as well. But I think that devotion, it's something that I've kind of, the word itself has kind of dropped in for me quite recently, because it's like, in one way, it's a way of living your life, right? Like because the only thing that you can control is yourself, your own little bubble, your own little circumstances, your energy, and this and that. And then devoting yourself in a very, like, it doesn't have to be in any forceful way, in any like harsh way, but just like, it's kind of a discipline, but it's also like graceful to do that. It's like the only thing that makes sense really throughout life, to devote yourself to yourself, because you can't really do anything else at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
exactly. And there's so much grace to experience as you connect deeper to self as well. And it's funny, like speaking about non-duality, I always feel a bit awkward because whenever we start to use our words, we're
Yeah.
already making things into a concept. And non-duality is about oneness. Non-dual means not two, so it's about being not separated. But
Yeah.
as soon as we start to talk about it as something, we are already separating it from the thing,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what's so beautiful is that when we speak of self or of I, is that we have this awareness within our experience that is the same in me as it is in you. And this is also like, this is the foundation of yoga. It's just that we so rarely speak about it in a simple way, because it's so mystified in so many like books and scriptures, where
Yeah.
it's who we are. It's when we refer to I as in I am here.
Yeah.
That's who we are.
Yeah.
And when I love that. Do you like Avatar, the movie?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite movies, and I love how they tell each other, instead of saying hello or instead of saying I love you, they say I see you. And I mean, with namaste, when we
Yeah,
use
I was just gonna say
namaste at
that.
the end of class, it's like the truth in me recognizes the truth in you. It's that thing that is the same in you as it is in me. And it's
Yeah, it's
that's
like
what it
mere
is.
consciousness.
Yeah,
And like, for me, that's what it kind of comes down to all the time, to realize that you're all these things, but you're also only mere consciousness. And that's kind of what you can recognize in others, that we're both just two conscious or unconscious, whatever you want to call it, but two beings that have the same spark in us, that keeping us alive, and
exactly.
that the soulful like energy that we carry.
Yeah, and I love how my teacher Tara, she always says that consciousness is constantly conspiring for you to discover yourself. And the like, we are here for this human experience to live, to feel, to sense all of these things, so that consciousness can experience itself through you.
Yeah.
And
It's
there's
like,
only one of you, you
yeah,
know? It's like there's
yeah,
only one in the flavor of you that consciousness get to experience exactly like that.
yeah. And I feel that kind of, when you have that approach and you get that perspective, your appreciation for yourself increases so much, and also your appreciation for everyone else, because it's like, wow, we're all these incarnated beings here on earth, like navigating this experience, and oh, now your consciousness or your journey or trajectory or soul is experiencing this, and like, I'm not in your shoes, but I can still kind of relate to what you're going through, because it's kind of somewhat similar for all of us, right? Oh,
It
that's so.
is. It
And
is.
when
And
you say
that
non-duality, I think that maybe not everyone are familiar with non-duality as a concept. How would you, I mean, it's difficult to explain, but what's the kind of practice, or what's the teaching, or what's the purpose of that as a concept?
yeah. So non-duality is like the teachings that I mostly come back to over and over again comes from the non-duality tradition in India, Advaita Vedanta. Like one of the teachers that I've been studying is Ramana Maharshi, he's called the father of non-duality in India, but as everyone understands who starts to dive into non-duality knows that no one can be the father of it, because it's like it's who we all are. But that's sort of how he's described. And as this is the essence of who we are, there are so many different lineages and practices that are talking and pointing towards the same thing. So we can speak about what's the meaning of life, or why am I here, or who am I?
Yeah.
What is this? What is this whole thing that we're currently doing or experiencing?
Yeah.
But one of the tools that is very easy and something that you can incorporate in your daily life is called self-inquiry, which is when we ask ourselves questions. So let's say that you find yourself in a situation where you are triggered for some reason. Maybe you dropped your cup of coffee and that sort of set you in a mood.
Yeah.
But then if you would just take a pause and like do a self-inquiry practice with yourself, you could go like, okay, so who is annoyed?
Yeah.
And that would just allow you to sort of get a little bit of distance from that part of you that is triggered, right? And you can sort of observe it. And then you might start to realize that the part that is observing the triggered part might be like, oh, but I can just wipe it off and then it's all good and I can make a new cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And then you're like, but who's saying that? And you keep on doing that until there are no questions left, until you rest as consciousness, resting in self. And then you start to realize that there are all of these movement and motions happening all the time. Like there are thoughts, emotions, colors, sounds, tastes, the things you see, all of these things are coming and going. But there's something that's always here, watching the things that come and go.
Yeah.
And that's who you are.
Yeah. It's like
And
the
reminding,
observer behind it all.
exactly, and reminding ourselves of that over and over again helps us to expand consciousness so that we can operate from a different place and actually play with life.
Yeah.
Because what it does, I usually describe this as when we start to realize what we are, there is this automatic separation that happens from your character, the person, your personality.
Yeah.
And consciousness, the observer, the witness, God, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But then you dive back into the humanness of it all, to your character. And when you understand that I am that, there are less limitations to play out your character, your humanness.
Definitely. And I find that because, I mean, now that you're talking about it as non-duality, it kind of clicks for me that my journey with yoga, this has kind of been the same like process of realization. Like you're the observer, the true you is the unshattered like blue sky behind everything else and all the drama and turmoil and identities and everything. But I really can attest to that. That's helped me so much to have a much more joyful and almost like humorous approach to life a bit, and be like, it's a bit of a crazy, it's like a playground in one way, like of course there's like the all seriousness as well, but it kind of takes the edge off that nothing is forever, nothing is permanent. It's more like, what am I experiencing today, or who am I today, or like to have a bit more fun, I guess, with this whole human play suit.
It invites us to take ourselves less personal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to take
it's like,
life less serious as well, I guess.
Yeah. And you also start to become more present with the things that you are doing, instead of living in the future, planning what's going to happen later today or tomorrow or next week or next month.
Yeah.
And you don't get stuck in the stories.
Yeah.
Because all we know for sure is what's happening right here, right now. The rest of it is all up here.
Yeah.
It's in our minds.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's quite likely, like if me and you, let's say that we would live exactly the same and we would walk next to each other for a long time, but your perception of what the world is and what your experience is still going to be completely different from mine.
Yeah. We have different filters for it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like walking the path of yoga. It's like you keep on taking off the glasses, and then you realize, oh, there were another pair and another pair and another pair. Like, oh, now I know it. And they're like, okay, no, there's more.
That's what I find so cool about like practicing yoga and meditating and like looking within in that way, that it's always kind of refining our perception of reality and our perception of ourselves. And I think that it kind of day by day, or like in different eras, it's kind of cleaning the lens a bit and like coming back to what is true and what's maybe not true. And like I recently just really had this profound sense that it's all about, and it's so cliche, but like love is kind of the cotton thread through it all. That's kind of, if you think about the mere consciousness, or like you're in the non-duality, that's a space of just profound unconditional love. And even if you might think that it, or how I've thought about it, like, oh, you could be like, okay, it's a very clean and neutral state, but then I'm like, oh, but I think the universe in its clean and neutral state is a very loving and like benevolent creation, I guess. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So I'm very into like this. Yeah, everything is all about love at the end of the day, and then like sometimes you drift off from love. And I'm now thinking about it, like, you know, the book by Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love. Do you know this
Yes,
book?
I haven't read it, but I know it. Yeah.
Oh, I love this book, and I guess that's kind of what she gets back to all the time, to always try to come back to love, even though we might be drifting away in fear or what it is, to really find the path of love, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, all the
but it's so true.
say, but it does resonate at the end of the day.
It does, and it might feel like talking about love in that sense can feel a bit like, it can almost feel a bit shallow, but it's not. It's love is the essence. And Ram Dass is he's like one of my favorite, like, I don't even know what to call him, teachers, guru, humans. Exactly. He's definitely an expander. And I love the way that he speaks about love, and when he talks about what we're doing here as humans and how we're all just walking each other home. And that just keeps on coming back to me over and over again. Whenever there are things that get to me or makes me upset or sad or whatever it is, that, hey, we're doing our best. We're doing our best, and everyone is doing their best with what they have. It's because the essence of being here is love. There's nothing else. We need to remember that, even when things are hard.
Yeah, that also, like, that can help also in in having understanding for people that maybe do stuff where we're like, ooh, that's not how I would do it. But then you're like, everyone are on their own path of finding their way and their like truth, and so you have to go through maybe hardship or whatever to come to different realizations about yourself or about life or the mechanisms of the universe. They might not just drop in when you're smooth sailing.
Exactly.
Okay, but that's very. It's so helpful with these. Like I also like Michael A. Singer's like Untethered Soul and Surrender Experiments, and I guess what all these teachers are. All the teachings kind of are talking about non-duality in some way, to separate ourselves from the identity or the ego or the thoughts and be like, okay, actually the real you is this blissful, peaceful, loving essence behind it.
Exactly. And I love that so many traditions are pointing to the same thing.
Yeah.
And of course, there are many different pathways to get there, and tools and things like meditation or whatever it is, or just listening to a talk, or it doesn't really matter, because when you start to understand that we're so much more than who we think we are, the whole perspective of being alive changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you appreciate the mystery and the whole, like, everything that has conspired for you to even exist. It's like you kind of have this other, like, of course you tap out of it, but you have this great gratitude almost embedded in your like daily life, because you're like, it's a miracle that we're here and that we can experience everything that you can experience, like all the good emotions, all the bad, all the like, because it's helping us grow and evolve in at some level.
Yeah, so beautiful how you describe it.
Okay, but if we move from the non-duality to, because you're also like your yoga that you teach is a lot about movement and embodiment, and can you elaborate a bit on your approach to what you teach right now?
Absolutely. And the thing is that it changed quite recently, the way that I teach yoga in a big way. And I went to a 300-hour embodied flow training with Tara Judell. And it was like, I remember this was last year, so it's very recently. I had never practiced with her. I just felt like, okay, I need to go to this.
Yeah.
So I did, and we came into the shala, and she started guiding a movement practice, and it was just like that felt like a huge piece of the puzzle in my teaching, that was just like, here you go. This is how you incorporate all the things that you do into one.
Wow.
And have you ever been to an embodied flow class?
No, I haven't.
No.
On Monday I'm going to this inside flow class. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's kind of like this dancing method of yoga, which my sister recommended to me. But I haven't done the embodied flow. I'm curious.
It sounds like it could be something similar.
I definitely, and I think it would be nice for me as well.
Yeah, so it can be asana, but it's also a lot of free movement. But what it does is that we work with the physical aspect, the body. We work with the mind, as like coming from a coaching perspective. And then we work with energy. So it's also transmission based. And it was like, my whole being was just like, oh, I get it. And it felt like such a like profound deepening of what yoga is.
Yeah. And
it's
aligned
so
with
beautiful.
everything that you've learned up to this point, I guess.
Yeah, and there's like infinite possibilities to what you can create within that practice, and you can make it your own, which I love, not only as a teacher but also as a person coming to the class, because it's all up to you. So what we do in those, I call my classes somatic flow,
Yeah.
because I'm not done with my certification. It takes quite a long time. But so I call them somatic flow. And what we do is that we work with a theme every class. So it could be a part of your physical body or energetic body. We could work
Yeah.
with the chakra, for example, and what that means. Or we could do a class from the kidneys, or one of my favorite topics is the skin.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it just helps you to come in deeper contact with like specific parts of your physicality as you start to understand how it correlates to your mentality, to your energetic emotional
Wow.
body and all of it. It's so powerful and
Wow.
so creative and fun and explorative. And to, because even I don't know if you've ever come to my yoga
I
classes
don't know, but
prior.
I'm like, why
No.
haven't I? Because everything you say, I'm like, I love this. I will
But I
be
used
there like
to,
next week.
yeah, you're more than welcome. But I used to instruct or like teach vinyasa flow or very like physical practice. But I always ended my classes with like 10 minutes of free flow where people got to do what they needed to do to take care of their bodies. Because that
Yeah.
was one of the things that I loved doing when I go to classes. But now it's like the whole class is based on that philosophy that you are here for you. So you do not need to follow my guidance, but you can if you want to, but there's no right or wrong. And we're painting outside the lines. And this is what I've been longing for in my own yoga practice, because it can feel quite strict from time
Yeah.
to time. And there's also an upside to that, of course, but I love to embrace more femininity and to allow that to also be a part of your physical practice, so that you start to teach your body that there is no like right or wrong way
Yeah.
of doing things.
Yeah. A lot more freedom.
A lot more freedom, and also sort of to create new pathways,
Yeah.
for your body to move. And like,
Yeah.
wait, what happens if I'm in warrior 2 and I don't tuck my tailbone? How does
Mm.
that feel? Can
Mm.
I feel life force flowing through me easier? Or like, what happens when we just do small shifts? Or what happens when I'm on my mat and I allow my kidneys to tell me where to go?
Wow.
And what happens if I step outside of my mat? How do I respond to that? Does that feel scary?
Yeah.
Do I end
Oh
up
my
standing in
God.
a corner, or do I walk to the center and take up space? You know, there's so much information that
Yeah.
comes with practicing in a more free, open way, that can help our growth and our journey forward.
Wow, this resonates so much for me because I've always felt more drawn. In general, like dancing, I find really freeing, or like even like bar classes or anything where you get to move. There's still like yogic elements, but there's also a bit more freedom and a bit more like expansion. And there's not, because sometimes
Yeah.
the same that you like, I can feel that some yoga gets restricted on me, and then I'm like, I really resonate more with feminine ways of movement in general. And I remember my yoga teachers, maybe they'll see this, but my yoga teachers in India, they were kind of pulling my leg when I was like, I'm going to teach an intuitive flow at the like exam. And they're like, that doesn't exist, Natalie. I was like, for my body, that exists, because I am not
Yeah.
enough. I don't like, I understand and I appreciate like Ashtanga and these kind of styles of yoga and vinyasa. Like, I love vinyasa, but recently I'm more and more drawn to much more freer and flowy and unrestricted, that there's no rules really, because when you
Yeah.
start to connect more with your body and you start to feel the life force bubbling in there, sometimes it wants to do stuff that the mind can't really put a word onto, or it wants to do a transition, or it wants to suddenly just do some cat cows, and then it wants to, it's like
Yeah,
it has kind of an intelligence of its own that you kind of start to connect and more with. So
it
I
does. And
have to
it's,
come to these classes. It sounds
yeah,
amazing.
you're more than welcome. And I think also when coming back to what yoga means,
Mm,
it means union of body, mind, soul. There is not one way of
no,
doing that.
no,
And I think because it's the traditional yoga practice, if we speak about Ashtanga or Hatha,
yeah,
it's very masculine. It's like
yeah,
very straightforward. Like this is what it is. The shape should look exactly the same, no matter
yeah,
what type you have.
mm,
And the feminine wisdom and the feminine intelligence is the opposite of that. It's
yeah,
about listening and
yeah,
tuning in and like,
and
wait,
feeling
what does
your way
my
forward.
yeah, what does my body want in this moment? What does it need? How
Mm,
can I listen to that and give myself the space to explore that?
yes,
And that's how we also evolve. If
yeah,
we were to do things in one way all the time, I mean, that would cultivate discipline. Um,
yeah,
we would like complete things, and which is also super important and effective. But
mm,
if we want to expand and grow, we need to push those boundaries, and that's what we do.
yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, this resonates a lot for me. And I think that in general it feels like there's more, and I like that about AYÄM as well, that there's like more contemporary styles of yoga emerging where people are starting to like take leaps or take steps into other directions based on what's feeling good. And as a yoga teacher, not just teaching the like sequence that you've been taught throughout your trainings, but to be like, what happens if we do this? And oh wow, that was a profound shift in my body and mind. And I think when it comes to like expanding your mind or like connecting with your mind as well through your body, to do new stuff is kind of, because it can be like fear can come up when you're like doing something outside of what you're usually
exactly.
doing, or new ways of moving can be such a nice way to expand and address those kind of fearful based mind games, I guess.
Yeah, and to do that in a safe container helps us to apply that in other parts of our lives. Yeah,
Exactly. That's
it
what's so
sort of
cool about it.
stretches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, because I've really been on that theme, or something I've been thinking a lot about recently is how movement really is the core, like, and I guess embodiment in that sense is such a large medicine. And I think that a lot of people would really, and I didn't really, it's only recently that I've kind of started to tap into it more and more, how important it is to get into your body. And regardless of what practice leads you to that, I mean, maybe for some people it's lifting weights because then they feel grounded or whatever, but I
Mm.
just feel like embodiment and being in our body, because that's what we have. We are here right now to really cherish and really come into that space is so healing and so good for our well-being as well.
It is. It is. And I love I love using Shiva and Shakti in conversations like this.
Yeah.
Shiva being the masculine energy that holds the space,
Mm.
that that holds the ground,
Yeah.
whereas Shakti is the feminine essence of movement, of exploration and creativity,
Mm.
and they love each other,
Yeah.
but they cannot hold on to each other. They need to set each other free in order for things to grow and for them to evolve. And I think we're in a stage of humanity where yoga is really interesting. Like
Yeah.
there's so much to choose from, and we are starting to break the rules, and there are things happening. Whereas the philosophy and the ancient tradition is also more talked about because it's no longer just about fitness in our
Yeah.
part of the world.
Yeah.
Um, it also gets more about the essence of yoga, which is
Yeah.
so beautiful because that's also a way of actually respecting the tradition in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree, and it's And it's also so nice because I think that, I mean, spirituality, if you see that as well, but in general, just connecting with ourselves, it feels like society or the modern world is a bit maybe starved of that connection, and yoga and these things popping up are so accessible for people to actually come into that space and to at least contemplate a bit deeper about like who they are, or what's going on in their mind, or how are they feeling in their body. And yeah, I agree. It feels like some kind of awakening of the mass of people towards these these practices,
Yeah.
respecting them, because they have. For me, that's always why I come back to yoga and why I feel so passionate about it. That it's like we're talking about something that's been around for thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
and like I'm always, and I've made videos on the channel about the Yoga Sutras, and I'm just so breathtaken that there somebody or some people or a lot of people many years ago knew so much and understood so much about the human mind and the body and how they're connected. And I just think that it's cool that people are starting to, in this day and age, look back towards, wait, how were they doing it back in the days, you know?
Mm. Yeah, and I think this is also what's going to help us to move forward, and where like the world is completely chaos right
Mm,
now. But
mm,
when we go to the direct experience, it nothing has changed.
no.
Like I still have a body, I have emotions, I have thoughts, I have all of these sensations, and that's what's actually here. So what happens if I learn more about it, and if I start to truly embrace what this whole thing is, because
Mm,
that's what embodiment is, to
yeah,
embody who you are.
yeah. Yeah, and that's such a, for me, that's been such a deep process as well, to really connect with your physical body in a much deeper and more appreciative and more connected way, so that it's almost like now, instead of even, I live more from my body because I'm more
Mm.
connected to its cues, to its signals, to, I guess, that your intuition, your feelings, and it's a totally different way to move through the world, I guess.
Yeah. Have you noticed, like, I don't know if you have like a history where you've been like if you've had that inner critic that has been a
Mm,
bit mean to yourself, but have you noticed how that voice is talking to you now compared to before?
definitely. Like
Yeah.
it's night and day. It's so, and the kind of, and I think people talk a lot about self love and all these, like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
but I really feel that on a very deep level, the appreciation I have for my body and what it allows me to do, it's changed how I carry myself, I guess, and
Mm.
how I value my body and how I talk to my body, and how, like, it's kind of a reclamation of the power and the inner landscape to, and that's, I guess, a very big teaching and benefit of yoga, is that it really allows you to appreciate yourself, not only on your, like, personality wise, but your body and your everything going on in there, and the emotions and your heart and your sensitivity and all these things, that it's like, okay, I hear you, I see you, I've got you, we're on the same team here.
Yeah. And I think because the body, when you start to understand what the body really is doing for you,
Mm,
you start to appreciate it so much more, and it also becomes less personal,
yeah,
um, because you know you're so much more than
yeah,
that. And
yeah,
I think also the body, you start to look at the body as a vehicle,
yeah.
for you to know yourself better,
Mm,
for you to experience yourself fully. And
yeah.
I think because this has been such a huge thing for me, and also something that I come back to over and over again, that when I'm there, when I'm completely connected, when I'm in complete presence, I'm like, oh, Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
everything you do for me.
yeah,
Like, because I mean, if ever I get sick, I had the flu last week or
mm,
whenever it was, and
yeah,
I get frustrated, like, oh, I had so many things to do. Now I need to rest, and I had a fever and blah, 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 blah. But then,
yeah,
like, hey, okay, I get it. You need rest. Like
yeah,
that's what you need. The only thing you're doing right now is processing something that needs to work through your system. And here I am nagging you, like being disappointed. Like, thank you for taking care of this.
yeah.
You know?
I really hear you in that. I feel when it comes to rest, and that's something that I've become much more attentive to recently, that I need more rest than I probably thought I needed. And
Mm.
if I'm not listening the first time, I'm starting to feel like, whoa, I need to kind of retreat a bit. I need to cancel some stuff, and I need to be there for myself rather than show up for loads of social stuff or whatever it might be. And it's like the moment that I take that like commitment, like, okay, wait, we're gonna reschedule some stuff, we're gonna take some time out here, it's like my whole body relaxes, and then
Yeah.
it's almost like I don't even need to rest as much because my body's like, oh, Natalie heard us. It's like,
Yeah. Because that's what it is. It's about listening.
mm,
Listening and acknowledging and holding space for the things that are trying to voice themselves within your experience.
yeah, yeah. And
Because
I think that,
that's a longing to be
yes,
heard, to be seen.
yes, and
Yeah.
it's so intimate once, as you said, that you're giving yourself a physical hug because you're like, okay, I listened. Like, sorry that I didn't
Yeah.
first, and you're almost ashamed towards
Yeah.
yourself to like, oh my goodness. Because when you slow down as well, all the stuff that you've kept yourself busy with can be like, oh, but that doesn't really matter that much. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
need to prioritize my health first, and then we can do all these stuff. And it's like, you, especially when you're working in these fields, you're like, am I, why am I not getting it? And then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, it's an intimate and very nourishing dialogue to start to have with yourself, I guess.
It
And to
is.
listen to the cues and the whispers and the like, oh, now I'm starting to feel slightly off. Like, okay, let's like take the break one step back maybe, and that might be enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like that's how we also stretch our capacity to hold more when we
Mm,
start to listen. Because the thing is, when we keep on pushing ourselves, it gets number and number and number, and then
yeah,
when we decide to pause, we might need to rest for a really long time. We might face burnout or fatigue or
yeah,
whatever it is. But once we listen on a day-to-day basis, it
yeah,
might be a 5-minute break to just
yeah,
sit down and like hand onto your heart and like, okay, I'm here. I'm
yeah,
here. And then
yeah,
that's that. And then you transcend it because you know it, you hear it, and you can continue with the rest of your day.
yeah. And that's kind of the paradox, really, that
Yeah.
you just need to check in a bit all the time and make sure everything's okay, and then it doesn't have to be more than that. I guess it comes back a bit to
Yeah.
devotion as well, to like devote yourself to check in with yourself.
Yeah, it's about not checking out, I think.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Because it's like I have a friend, he always says to me, since I work with the Kundalini energy as well, he's like, yeah, so after class, then we're just going out in the world into Kundalini blocking process. Because that's basically what it is when we start to like push the true things down,
Yeah.
emotions, whatever it is,
Yeah.
instead of like just being checked in all the time. And when you
Yeah.
are, once you are, because I mean, all of us have periods in life where we actually are completely present and
Yeah.
where everything feels aligned and we're in flow,
Mm,
we know how
that
that
feels.
feels.
Yeah.
And what happens when we're there, we start to attract like the things that we enjoy or the things that we long for, they just come our way
Mm.
because we're just there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of you're in the, I want to say passenger seat, but you're like just going the direction that you're intended to go, not questioning where that flow is taking you.
Exactly.
Mm. That's
Yeah.
cool. I haven't really thought about it that way, but that was a nice way of putting it. I like it.
It's interesting because you get more and more particular with your word the more you
Yeah.
practice non-duality, because it just doesn't make any sense after a while speaking.
No, no, exactly. That's what I feel in many senses. Like, and there's so many things that you experience when you're like yoga or whatever it might be, or just being, that you can't really put into words. It's just like experiences you have with being alive, but it's like it can be.
Exactly.
I mean, you can maybe say bliss or connection or whatever, but it's something that the vocabulary, I guess, hasn't evolved in those
Yeah.
realms, or I need to educate myself.
No, I think you're right. I think, I mean, to come back to Ramana Maharshi, was a non-dual teacher in India. He mostly didn't speak, he was silent.
Yeah.
And people would come to sit next to him, to be in his energy, to get the transmission of consciousness. But sometimes he would answer questions, but mostly he just sat there, because that, for him, that was more clear than talking about it. And I start to understand that more and more, I must say.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever gonna go silent. I'm too much. I enjoy being human way too much, and like, I love connection and to talk about things, and I think that's also part of my mission here with what I do. But yeah, I can use words in a different way, and I think that's probably what's going to change for me, that just talk when there's actually things that needs to be said. Yeah.
Yeah, become more curated and refined, I guess, in what's important or what needs. But yeah, that's interesting. I also think about that sometimes, about now also having this YouTube channel, like what's necessary and what's essential, but then also like words and expression is also, as you say, like part of the human experience, and we have a voice to speak. I guess they always say, like, you have two eyes to see and two ears to listen, so that says something. You have one mouth, but still to make use of your voice. But yeah, that's also something with yoga, I feel, and all these stuff, that it really helps you to open up your way of expressing yourself, and as we like setting boundaries and honoring what feels right. It kind of connects as well with your voice.
I agree, and I think setting boundaries is such a huge theme, especially for women. It feels very connected to the feminine energy in a way, because the feminine, like Shakti, it's boundless and ever moving, ever evolving, and it's all emotion. So how do we contain that? Like, where do I begin and where do I stop? And even if I feel boundless, if I feel like I'm ever expanding, like, how do I contain myself?
Yeah, in the physical as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I also find a process to navigate, and to, because it's also like I think that the creation energy, it has a lot of energy to it, and it's a nice energy to be in, but then sometimes you kind of get like, whoa, wait, I need to have
overwhelmed.
I have some kind of like boundary, but boundaries, it's not only physical, it's like in many ways boundaries. It's definitely something that you need to honor a lot to stay sane, I think.
Yeah, it's a practice for life.
Yes.
It truly is a practice for life, both if it's like in the most dense human aspect of our experience, when it comes to drama or like whatever, where we obviously need to understand other people's boundaries and also our own. But also in the energetic and physical aspect of moving, of being in motion. it is a practice of how much do I want to share of myself with the world in
Yeah.
this moment?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a balancing act, I feel, as well. And like, when have I got a cup that is running over and I can share, but then that doesn't mean that that's always my state of mind. So how do I manage expectations? Or yeah, it's definitely, I think, a lifelong project to find it. And I guess it also changes over time, what resonates and what doesn't, and how you conduct yourself. But it's like being in the world and applying all these like spiritual insight or teachings that you have, but then also like just being a normal person and operating like anyone else, kind of. So it's
And I think that's also why it feels like the more you learn, the less you know.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I feel like I just keep on getting more and more human.
Yeah.
The more spiritual experiences I have, the denser the human experience becomes. And it's like, it is not easy being human.
No, and that's so true. It's like it gets more and more real in the human experience.
It does, and I guess it's because you stop bypassing it.
Yeah.
Because you're there for all of it, the full spectra, and you allow yourself to feel it fully instead of shutting down or blocking things out. And it's like, hey, this human thing is it's a real thing. Like,
it's not for the faint-hearted.
It's not. And but I also believe that it's so important not to forget that that's why we are here, to experience all of that, because there are so many in the spiritual community that go up, 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 and they sort of just stay there in this floatiness and like, oh, everything is divine and pure, and which is lovely. But if you cannot embody yourself, you're just missing out on the experience.
Yes. And I think that even though it's terrible, that the most difficult, like, emotions and everything, they really are portals to some kind of evolving and growth.
For sure.
You're not doing yourself a favor by avoiding the dark or the stuff that doesn't feel so airy-fairy. It's like, it's necessary to be the whole human that you are, and to also have like compassion for other people that are going through that kind of way of life, because it takes a lot of open heart and open minds to take it all in, I guess.
And it tend to get stuck when we don't. Like, it's not like we can put it away and it will disappear.
No.
It will just manifest in a different way, maybe pain in your shoulder or a disease or whatever. So it will, because consciousness is constantly conspiring for you to experience life, and when you choose not to, it will find another way for you to experience it. It's
you can't
natural pulsation. Exactly. And we have this rhythm of expansion and contraction, and if we don't allow ourselves to be in the contraction, there is no more expansion. We need to go through it. That's how it moves, and it's like it's coming and going, coming and going, coming and going.
It's
that's
like
also the beauty.
Like a cycle, like for everything, it's just spiraling.
Yeah, it's definitely spiraling. I love the spiral as a symbol, because that's, I think also if we speak about like personal development and growth, if you have a specific wound that you're working with, let's talk about boundaries, since that's what that's been a bit of a theme. So if that's something that you practice, to set boundaries towards the people you have in your life, like, okay, I want to learn how to say no when I need to rest, because maybe that's something that's been difficult. So let's play with that. And then you start to practice saying no. You get invitations to dinner or to go do something, and you're like, no, I just want to be home. And then you practice that. And maybe first you go like, oh, this is a bit difficult for me, but I feel like I need to prioritize something else or whatever. And then eventually it gets easier and you're like, oh, no, I can't, without any explanation. And it's just like, enjoy yourself, but I can't.
Yeah.
And then you've done the full lap around that level, and then you move up, and then when you're at that same place, you're going to meet that same type of lesson, but on a deeper level. And you're going to be, but wait, I already knew how to set boundaries. Why can't I anymore? And it's like, oh, wait, no, it's another type of boundary now that I need to practice. And it keeps on moving like that, peeling off layer after layer after layer.
Yeah, I really feel that. And I feel that life gets in that way deeper and deeper, because everything in front of you, if you're like in the present and you're like, okay, I have to deal with whatever is at my doorstep, it's like then every experience just has a lot more depth to it, because you're like, okay, what's this maybe here to teach me, or what can I learn from this, or how do I navigate this? And it's in that way, like the spiral, even if it's going upwards, it's like everything's getting richer on the way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. It is. And it feels like, to me, that whole analogy, it doesn't really matter if we describe it as going down or going up, because it's like, it's just in constant motion. It's like, whoop, it's like the DNA thing, you know?
It's like the go, like,
Yeah.
Well, I'm seeing here the time is flying.
Really?
I don't know what surprise. I'm not sure exactly how you are on time, but I figured that maybe I should start to round it off.
Yeah.
I feel like we've covered a lot of interesting things, and I'm very intrigued about coming to some somatic flows or embodied flows, whatever they will be in the future. But I really resonate with that, and yeah, I'm curious. I know that AYÄM is in very expansive mode, and there's a lot going on for you. Is there anything else like coming up or related to AYÄM that you would like to share? I mean, I know you have your coaching, and we haven't even touched upon that. Maybe I'll have to bring you back to.
I would love to come back for a second conversation. Yeah, for sure. But no, I don't know. Like, there's so much to say about AYÄM. It feels like its own movement, its own thing, and it's become such a precious place for so many to move and to feel and to experience and to challenge themselves. And I think that was like my main intention with the studio, was to create a space where people would get to explore new things and also to be who they are, teachers and students, so that it's a place for everyone. And I think that's why we have a lot of classes that are quite unique, because I want my teachers to do offerings that resonate with them, and I really encourage them to find their own voice.
Yeah.
That's
so beautiful. And I think that you can tell that as you come in touch with AYÄM, that there's stuff is brewing there, and it's like not only the students but also the teachers are evolving a lot, because there is so much freedom and like expansion in the walls, I was gonna say, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's very, I think in that way, the way you've created and set up the studio, and that's what I feel is very unique about it, is that it's everything is so fluid and evolving, and it feels like every time I go there's so much more has happened, and there's so much interesting classes, and I'm like, whoa.
Oh, I'm so glad you feel that way. Yeah, it is a very special place. And I also want to say that the idea started with me, but it's really a co-creation with everyone who sets their foot there, from our clients to teachers to karma yogis to my studio manager, who's like an angel sent from heaven supporting me in all my visions. And like, yeah, so it's really, it feels more like a movement, in a sense. It's in motion, in constant motion.
Yeah, it's very I'm looking forward to coming there next week for
You're more than welcome. I would love to have you.
Yeah, I'll have to check
Yeah.
exactly what dates and times, but then I'll have you back on here soon as well, because I feel like we touched upon like
Let's do it.
20% of what I had in mind. So and maybe next time we can do it in person as well.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for being here today and taking your time and sharing all your thoughts and perspectives and teachings. I really look to you as such a grounded and trustworthy like source of everything that you experience and your perspective. So
thank you so much for that.
Cool.
And thank you for doing this, for the work that you are spreading.
Yeah, thank you. Someone called me. That broke me up. I guess
I think so.
You.
Yeah.
I'll stop the recording here, and I'll see you back soon. Bye, everyone.
See you back soon.
Thanks for listening. Bye.